Hi, I'm Benoît Blanchon. I'm the author of ArduinoJson. I'm here to talk to you about my book, Mastering ArduinoJson. We already had ArduinoJson.org that contains the API reference, the tutorials, the FAQ, and the assistant. But by nature, a website doesn't provide a good learning experience. It is fragmented and is not meant to be read in one shot. A book, on the other hand, can be read from front to back. It provides a continuous and linear and progressive source of information. It is the best way to learn without missing anything. Let's open the book and see what's inside. So this is the cover. Let's see the first chapter, which is an introduction to JSON and ArduinoJson. So it begins by explaining what is JSON, what is the syntax, how it became popular. And then it introduces ArduinoJson, what it is, why is it different, and what are the alternatives. It shows you how to install the library. Now, the second chapter is a C++ course that I call the Missing C++ course because it focuses on topics that are usually left behind by other books or tutorials on Arduino. So we start by explaining why there is a C++ course in this book, and it first teaches about the three areas of the RAM, which are the globals, the heap, and the stack. It then explains what pointers are. I know a lot of people are not comfortable with pointers, so that's why I included this in this course. Then it talks a lot about memory management. I know that a common misunderstanding is that in C++, the memory management must be done by the programmer. We'll see in this chapter that it is wrong. ArduinoJson uses a lot of references, so that's why this course includes a section on C++ references. What is the difference with a pointer? And the C++ course ends with a long section on strings, how strings are stored, and what are the different kinds of strings that you can find on an Arduino. The third chapter is a tutorial on deserialization. There is an example that guides you through the learning process. In this chapter, the example is the Yahoo weather forecast. So the chapters begin with a very simple example that just passes a simple JSON object, explains what the JSON buffer is, how to compute the size. It shows the various ways to extract the values from the deserialized objects. There are several syntaxes and they are explained one by one. It also shows how to inspect an unknown object, because you don't always know what are the keys, for example, in an object. Okay. Then it increases the complexity by deserializing objects in an array. Okay. Presents how to use the assistant. Now it shows how to extract the values from the array of objects. Same as before, it shows how to inspect an unknown array. And very importantly, it explains the various modes of the parser. So in the first part of the chapter, we used the zero copy mode because the input was mutable. And it explains how this mode works. And now in the rest of the chapter, it will use the other mode, the mode that I call the classic mode, that is used when the input is read-only. So it starts with read-only memory, then have a look at other kind of input, for example a stream. It could be a file, so we have an example reading a JSON from a file, and then it increases the complexity by passing the JSON in an HTTP response. So in our case, is the response come from Yahoo servers and contains the weather forecast. Okay, and with the book, you receive a zip file with the code of all the examples, like this one. Okay. The fourth chapter is a tutorial on serialization. So we take another example for this chapter, and in this case we want to send measured data to Adafruit.io. So it starts by creating a very simple object. As before, the complexity is incremental. Okay, it sets the value in the object, shows the different syntaxes. Now it uses an array of objects. It shows how to add the values, how to add special values like null or pre-formatted JSON. It shows how to serialize the object that we created into memory. So that's the simplest form. How to compute the length, how to serialize to a string, how to serialize to a stream. So, for example, how to send to the serial port, how to send to a file. So we have another example that sends the data to a file. And finally, how to send the JSON document in an HTTP request, because that's our goal, to send the document to Adafruit.io. And you can see the complete program is here, and the result on Adafruit.io. So it ends. This chapter ends with a small section on string duplication, because that's something that you need to understand. ArduinoJson by default tries to not duplicate strings, but in some case you need to do that. So this section explains when you need to do that and how to do it. The fifth chapter is a deep dive inside the library. So it looks at the implementation. Maybe not all people are interested by this, but it's a good way to learn why the library has such and such limitation and why it has such and such strengths. So it starts by explaining why we need the JSON buffer, the memory pool. Okay, there's a nice diagram here. Then it looks at static JSON buffer specifically and how the memory is allocated inside the buffer. Then, of course, it looks at dynamic JSON buffer. Okay, it's explaining how to choose it, how to choose between them. Then it looks at JSON array, how it is implemented. Then JSON object, of course. Same here, how it is implemented. It shows a simplified view of the implementation. It shows all the methods, the class. Then look at JSON variant. Same here, it shows a simplified implementation. Okay, every techniques like the OR operator of how to iterate through a JSON variant. Now it explains how the parser works, how the text is transformed into objects. Okay, the two modes that we talked about, the classic mode and the zero copy mode. Word on the nesting limit. course, the assistant, right? The quotes, the escape sequences, the comments, and yeah, all the good things. So it looks also at the serializer, so the part that transforms the object into text, how it measures length, how the conversion works, etc. And of course, a few miscellaneous things like the ArduinoJSon namespace that very few people know about, and the JSON buffer clear function that I hate, of course. It shows also a few facts about ArduinoJSon. For instance, the code coverage that is extremely high, the continuous fuzzing that is done on Google server, and a vulnerability that has been found and fixed in 2015. Right. Also talked about Wenbox. Wenbox is an online compiler. You can use ArduinoJSon inside Wenbox, which is very useful when you just want to try a few things, and or if you want to send an issue and show a defect in the library. Okay, the 6th chapter is about troubleshooting. So when something goes wrong with the library, how to debug, how to find the problem. So the first section is about program crashes. It shows the different reasons why your program could crash in C++ in general and with ArduinoJSon in particular. So it shows the different kinds of vulnerability. The null string is an obvious one. The use after free, using the return value of an address of a variable on the stack, the buffer overflow, the stack overflow. Okay. The second section is specific to deserialization. So you know that on ArduinoJSon.org you have all the reasons why parsing could fail, but in this chapter we have a longer explanation on the main reason why parsing could fail. The third section is about serialization issues. There are a few issues on serialization, but it's important to have the solution. The fourth section is a bit longer. It explains how to deal with long compilers error. So this is very a C++ thing. The compiler is very verbose, and where usually you have only one line on another language. With C++ you can have a whole page just for one error. So this chapter focuses on an error that was sent by a user named John on GitHub pages, on GitHub issues, and this set the error message to get to the root cause. So as you can see, there is a small diagram here that shows how to identify the errors and how to read them. So it's a step-by-step tutorial on learning about C++ error messages. The next section takes the common error messages, so it's almost the same content as the FAQ, but only focuses on the very common error messages. The 6th section is presents a few techniques to log the content of the serializer or of the to log the input JSON document or to log the produced JSON document. So it uses decorator, and you will see these are very handy classes. Then the chapter finished with a section on how to ask for help on GitHub issues. The last chapter, the 7th chapter, contains the case studies this part is very important. It takes several projects, example projects, and look at them in depth. So it's much more, it's much longer than the examples that you find on ArduinoJson.org, because it's more concrete projects. So the first project is a configuration file on the SPI-FFS. So for those who don't know, this is a board with an ESP8260, and alongside with the chip there is a flash memory connected with an SPI bus, and people like to save the configuration of the project in this. So this example is more complicated than the example that you will find on ArduinoJson.org, because there is more space on the book to explain how it works. And as you will see, no global JSON buffer here, no, and a minimum amount of dynamic allocation, if any. Okay, and it presents a pattern that is scalable and that can evolve with your program. The second case study is about OpenWeatherMap. OpenWeatherMap is a weather forecast service, and the service returns a gigantic JSON document. So it's quite challenging to parse this document with ArduinoJSon. In this chapter, we present a technique that consists in parsing the JSON document bits by bits. So only one forecast after the other. And this is done on a quite small microcontroller, the MKR1000. The third case study is using Weather Underground, and as before, as with OpenWeatherMap, the JSON document is so big that we need to read it in chunks, one forecast after the other. In this case study, to spice things a little bit, instead of performing the HTTP request by hand using Wi-Fi client, we use the HTTP client provided with the ESP8260 core for Arduino. So the code is a little simpler, and it uses dynamic memory allocation, which is okay because the ESP8260 has a lot of RAM. The fourth case study is about JSON RPC. JSON RPC is a lightweight RPC protocol based on JSON. It's in this case we use it to send messages to Kodi. If you don't know Kodi, it's a software to play videos on a computer. It's widely used for home theater personal computers. I personally use this on my TV. So you can send, well, you can do virtually anything with JSON RPC. You can start the video playback, increase or decrease the volume, but in this case we will use it to show a pop-up on the TV screen. And by doing so, we will create a JSON RPC framework that can be reused for other projects. For example, other projects like GDOM, the home automation platform, can be automized with JSON RPC. So you can, for example, you could switch on your light with JSON RPC. The last case study is a recursive analyzer. So you send a JSON document via on the serial port. So in this case, I'm using the Arduino serial monitor, and the program will analyze the JSON document and show it in a tree form, in a hierarchical form. For example, here it extracts the key sensor, it extracts the string, the string that is contained in the key sensor, and the nested array here. I know it's quite challenging to extract the content of a JSON document like this, so that's why I wanted to have a complete example showing how it can be done. As you see, mastering ArduinoJSon is for both beginners and advanced users. The writing style is simple and easy to read, so you will appreciate this book even if English is not your main language. By buying this book, you also encourage the development of high-quality libraries. By providing a small source of revenue for open source developers like me, you ensure that the libraries you rely on are continuously improved and won't be left abandoned after a year. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your read.